Rockland Fire Protection District Board of Trustees meeting for Monday, August 8th, 2016. Take a roll call. Dan Rogers. Here. Bob Grum. Here. Carlos Nova. Here. Stand with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first order of business for this evening is consideration of the minutes from the regular meeting of July 18th, 2016.
There's just a whole bunch of copies there.
I have a copy of it. Is there any discussion on the minutes?
No, I'll make a motion we accept the minutes as presented. Second.
Voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Did you talk louder?
I will try, thank you. The next item is procedures for public comment. Our attorney, Brian O'Connor, has put together a set of rules sample rules for the trustees that we'll discuss a little bit later, but there's one particular section in there that has to do with just general rules for conducting the public comment section of the meeting. So I think all trustees, you have a chance to look at them. Any comments? Anyone would like to make on these? Actually, I do have a comment that I would like to make on section. I really like these. I think they'd be very helpful. I think they're very reasonable in just trying to get everybody a chance to speak their mind and keep things respectful and civil. I do have a question about section 5, which is persons addressing the board may comment on issues of public interest. The board will not respond nor engage in debate or discussion.
Carl, you're not talking loud enough, I'm sorry.
Okay,
But
thanks, Pat.
we can't hear you.
Okay. Persons addressing the board may comment on issues of public interest. The board will not respond nor engage in debate or discussion relating to comments offered or made. I guess my concern on that feels on the surface to be overly restrictive, in that just to allow people to make their statement, but that they will get no response from the board. And the way it's worded is will not respond. I do know this is a business meeting, and our primary reason for here is to conduct the business of the board, and that to engage in a lot of discussion and debate is not really the best venue for that. But what I would like to get is some input, both from you and from you guys, on what venue can we provide, because I think the members of the community don't just want to speak to us. I think they do want to talk to us, ask us questions, get our answers. So I'm really, if we're not going to do it in business meetings, how are we going to do this?
Are you saying, excuse me, that we can only say something and they will not answer any questions of ours? Is that what you're saying? We can't ask them questions?
As they're written, that's what it says. Now, we can suspend the rules at any time, but it will take a vote of two members of the board to suspend the rules. And in fact, technically, we shouldn't be having this discussion right now. That when it comes down to the agenda items, unless it specifically says in the agenda item, for that agenda item, we are going to open it for questions, then, as I understand the general rules of conduct of these meetings, we do not take questions. That this is for us to conduct our business. So that's why I'm asking this question of what is the right venue to allow more open discussion if it's not at our business meeting?
So here's the genesis of the public comment is an amendment to the Open Meetings Act. Interestingly, in the section that talks about minutes, but okay, who cares? And what it says is members of the public have to be provided the opportunity to offer public comment to the corporate authority board. That's all it says. One of the concerns we have from a legal perspective is if you engage in discussion or debate, and you don't limit it to just offering comment as the law says, and you engage in discussion or debate, and you don't engage in discussion or debate with everybody, then you're becoming selective in who you're engaging in discussion and debate with. And if you're becoming selective in who you're engaging in discussion or debate with, are you then opening yourself up to charges of discrimination? I didn't answer your question because you're green, you're purple, your hair is frizzy, you know, whatever protected category you want, God knows, we have enough protected categories. So as a general rule, when, and in fact, I created these, we use these in a number of districts I go to, because it provides the assembled, anybody, any member of the public, to make a comment, not more than 5 minutes, because of course we're here for business, but to advise the board of issues of your concern. Now, the fact that they're not going to engage in discussion and debate, I mean, to answer your question, Carl, that doesn't mean you couldn't take a note on it. And once that's all done, in your trustee's part, you could comment on those questions. You just don't want to engage in a contemporaneous exchange, because we want to avoid that potential of we're playing favorites. I don't like you, so I'm not going to answer your questions, but I like him, so I'm going to answer his. You know, and we don't, and so, and in fact, if they approve this, I've got a bunch of these to hand out, because it's only fair that they be available to y'all. But that's kind of the genesis of how this came about.
Are we allowed then to ask you questions, Brian?
No, you're allowed to offer comment to the board, okay? So you can ask your question to the board.
And they won't answer us?
They won't, if they adopt these, they wouldn't answer them. They might answer them at a later point, but I tell them they shouldn't answer them contemporaneously, because I don't want to get us into a point of a contemporaneous exchange. Where I'm gonna answer yours, but we're gonna ignore her, you know, type.
I see, yeah. But
And so that's what it is. I would say, ask, if you have a comment to make, you make your comment. If you have a question to ask your question.
Well, who asked my question to?
The board in general, the board president. He's the presiding officer.
Right now, he's
Okay.
arguing, wasting time.
I mean, as you can look around this room, there's a lot of concerned residents
Sure.
here.
And one person is arguing, so I think questions should be presented, and then the board can supply answers.
The board is not required to supply answers.
And what is the purpose of us being here?
Would a motion to suspend the rules?
This is discussing and taking action about the fire department is why we all showed up, I believe.
Great.
Is that what we're only addressing tonight, or are there other issues?
No, the rule on public comment applies to everything. You could talk about anything. Time of service calls, number of service calls, you know, whatever you want. I mean, the rule applies to all. If you're only interested in one thing, you know, make your comment, and then somebody will take a note, and if appropriate or warranted, they could, at some point under trustee comments, they could respond to you, but they don't have to respond to you.
Is this something new?
No.
How do we get our questions and concerns answered then?
Well, then it's up to the board to to offer an opportunity to respond. One option would be to respond to trustee's comment. The other option, as the gentleman pointed out, or as
Excellent
trustee Sullivan
suggestion.
pointed out, is to have a motion to suspend the rules. And when you don't,
I'll make that motion.
no,
Yes.
you can't make that motion. That's not.
I second it.
Nice try, but it doesn't work.
I ask a question, do you have an agenda?
Sure.
Is it a public agenda that we can all see? Because I don't know what specific action you as a board are going to be doing tonight, or is there any specific? Yeah.
The agendas are always posted at least 48 hours on the front of the station, and they are on the website, again, at least 48 hours ahead of time. So you can always go there and get a copy of the agenda.
As far as discussion goes, public comment, would you not have call for special meetings, which would be an open forum? And that would alleviate the issue.
That's a third option too. You could
That was the question.
And that's what I thought tonight's meeting was, specifically
No, this is a regular scheduled business meeting. I know we had talked about having an open house for people in the community to come to the station, you know, coffee, talk to you guys about whatever, but the trustees would also be there to answer questions. How does that play with the open meeting? Is that something that we have to make it a meeting if we're all here to ask questions?
You're all three of you are going to be here. You're all going to be talking about public business of the district. You qualify. It has to be posted as a meeting. You have to have minutes for the meeting. You know, not that they have to be. You know, they don't have to be court report or transcripts, but you have to have minutes of the meeting that reasonably reflect what happened. And if it's just a coffee with a orientation session on the station and things, that could be it. But the other, if you wanted to go to the extreme, the other extreme is to have a special meeting and have a public hearing on it. Now, once you have a public hearing, we're dealing with a whole set of new rules. At a public hearing, once he opens the hearing, it's Katie bar the door. Anybody can, within reason, anybody can speak on any topic or be stated topic for as long as they want. The problem is, as you can imagine, if everybody here spoke 15 minutes on one topic, might be here a little while. So generally what happens is when you have, and usually this situation occurs in municipalities when they're talking about changing zoning for a property. And usually what happens in those circumstances, when you have a lot of interest in something, the presiding officer will ask for comment, and then after a reasonable time, if you have no new comments to offer, I would ask you to refrain. If somebody's already said your piece, fine. And if you want to say, I support what he says, that's okay, but don't eat up everybody's time. But if you have something new or different or substantial to offer, well, that's a different story. But that would require a special hearing, or a public hearing at a special meeting. This is not that. This is just a regular business meeting.
Now, Brian, if somebody asks a question for public comment, which comes towards the beginning of the meeting, we may find that in the process of going through the agenda, we may have an opportunity to answer that question without any interaction directly at public comment time. Plus, I think they all have the opportunity. They can send us an email, write us a letter with questions, requesting a response. But I think in some of these issues that obviously you're all concerned about, I think a public meeting strictly for that purpose might be more beneficial.
And I'd agree. I mean, because tonight you're here to do stuff we didn't get done last month. You've got to pay bills. We've kind of blown a timeline on one of the laws. I mean, the Local Government Profit Payment Act. I mean, okay, but events were interrupted last time, so we just moved on. So we've got business we've got to take care of, and perhaps that's the best thing, given the level of interest, is just to consider the gang of three getting together in a time when you could have a public meeting devoted to just that.
Okay, so at this point, we are discussing these rules. I would like to ask if the board would be willing to change the wording on number 5, so that instead of saying the board will not respond nor engage in debate, that it would say the board is not required to respond. So that if they deem that it is appropriate at that time, they're allowed to, because I would take the wording as it stands that we must not.
Well, and remember, I'm going to be the devil's advocate, because you say, as soon as you say, as soon as you change from the here's the hard and fast rule and you put wiggle room in there, I'm going to bring up the same discrimination claim. You answer her, but not her. Why?
I withdraw my
I mean,
request.
You could do it. I think the better way to do this is to use the public comment to gather items of concern and interest from the public. And as Bob said, if it's appropriate and in the agenda, you could comment on them later. You could comment on them in your trustees' portions. Or, it sounds like there's a lot of interest in this issue of consolidation, dissolution, whatever, maybe the best thing to do would be just schedule a special meeting so everybody can get, talk through it. Understanding that, that like we talked a little bit last time, that whole consolidation, dissolution has a lot of moving parts.
Right, and I think the idea of a public meeting is a great idea. Once we've gathered enough information to have a decent meeting to present all the facts and issues. And I think there's a lot of facts to be found based on a lot of legislation and things that are swirling around right now. We have our hands full with a lot of things, and we need to gather a lot of facts to make a decent presentation to the public. And I think that's where we're at, is still a fact gathering point. We're not gonna do anything other than gather facts, at least that's my view of it.
I agree. I think we're months away from the point of where we start talking about
Right.
even looking at doing it. We don't have any of the facts yet.
Right, and that's what the.
That's kind of off topic right now. That's an agenda item, so.
Well, that's, okay.
Okay, that's the startling part, because there were the green cards posted on every mailbox that discussion and action was going to be taken at this meeting tonight, which
Ma'am, I don't
gave
know.
us the leading.
They'll get to that in their agenda.
I
You're just
don't
early
know
with
who
it.
put those out.
That is
We
the
did
agenda
not.
item. That is the
Yes.
word on the
Agenda
agenda
item.
item, so
It's
yes, we will
Okay,
absolutely.
maybe we should just listen to what you have to say, and then if there are any questions, we'll let just you carry on with what you have, and we'll be more informed, and you'll get
A
done.
voice of reason and logic.
I think it will become more evident as we go on.
Okay.
All right, so,
Want to adopt these then?
do you have a motion to?
Now, are we just doing the last page, or are we doing just the last page?
This is just for the last page, so it applies, and then I can pass these out, but then you have the full set of rules for the Board of Trustees,
Correct.
late as a
We can do that.
item number 10
For
or
our
something
reading
like that.
plan. Okay, Mr. President, I will make a motion that we adopt the sample rules of order as presented by our attorney.
Second.
Voice vote on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. So now we will open the floor for public comment. I do actually want to pass those out.
I was gonna say, if we can, we'll pass these out. I only have about 30 copies, so we'll just pass those out to folks. Pass those out.
Now, as raise your hand. I will call on you. Please state your name. And keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. It would be greatly appreciated, and please maintain respect and civility. We will appreciate that.
And I would say, just see what these rules are really, it just says, the board president who's charged with maintaining decorum of the meeting to ensure business is done is gonna maintain order, good order and discipline over the meeting. People will address the board one at a time. People will address the board when the board president recognizes them to be addressed. They'll announce who they are. We don't need addresses, home addresses and that. Refrain from offering repetitive or duplicative comments. Again, we're here to do business, more than just hearing the comments. And then refrain from comments, gestures, or other verbal or nonverbal communications when not recognized. The president is charged with maintaining orderly decorum. In the event public comment or behavior at the meeting becomes disruptive to the board's effective and efficient conduct of the meeting, the board presiding officer may recess the meeting. And that's a set. Those are the big parts. Be professional and courteous in your comments. I would expect them to do nothing else.
Open the floor for comments.
Wait a minute, did you open it up for public comment?
Yes, I did.
Yes, you did or you didn't?
I did, yes.
And did you say you wanted our address or no?
No, just a name.
So just the name Pat is, so I'm gonna make a comment because I know I'm not gonna get an answer, right? right?
You're arguing and
I want to
we
do
can't-
what you're getting at. So I'm going to comment on last month's meeting, which I was in the middle of my 5 minutes, hadn't completed them yet. The audience was quiet because I was asking you fellas, I didn't understand the month before that you could, okay, I'm trying to remember the question. If you wanted to dissolve the district, you nodded your heads, you had to go to referendum, am I right on that one? If you want to get the district. But if you wanted to outsource, you don't have to get any permission from anybody here. You can go ahead and do it, and I could wake up the next week and find out we don't have any firemen. And you nodded your head yes to that. Okay? That's the way I understood last month's meeting. In the middle of that, Trustee Rogers turned my question around and pointed to the gentleman in the audience. He pointed his finger, and then a little verbal confrontation went between the two of them. Okay? So, what I'm saying is, here, I know you didn't put this out. It's quoted. We don't have copies of your agenda here, but it quoted discussion and action on joint services with Lake Bluff. Okay, you can't answer. I'm assuming that it's quoted, that it's on your agenda on the door. And then the discussion and action on the investigation of contract, blah, blah, that's also a quote that you're gonna discuss tonight on your agenda. So, my other comment is the confrontation between Trustee Rogers and the man in the audience was conduct unbecoming of Mr. Rogers, an appointed trustee, and shame on you. Thank you.
Any other comments?
My name is Nancy Hanson, and I'd like to say to the trustees, you should be more careful how you word and put things on your agenda. That's all I have to say.
Other questions? Comments?
Brian Dupuy, I live on Muir Avenue here. I'd just like to know, when would you be scheduling that public meeting? If you decide to go that route.
They'd have to discuss that at the meeting and announce it.
But, so it would be tonight that you would make it public, or when that meeting would be or not?
You're not gonna answer you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I mean, this just came up, they haven't even talked about it yet. So, I mean, they may talk about it tonight, and they may schedule it, and if they do, they'll announce it, but, I mean, this is news. So,
Thank you.
My question is, who is the president and how do we recognize when we're being recognized so that we don't have?
First of all, can I have your name, please?
Stacy Niebuhr, 109 Jefferson.
Okay. I'm the president of the board. Is there something?
No, I just like, how somebody knows when they're recognized if several people have comments at one time.
Oh, well, generally the process there, you raise your hand, and I, as president, chair of the meeting, will call you individual. And really, we do want only just one person speaking at a time.
Thank you.
Anyone else? In that case, I think we can go ahead and close the public comment section and move on to the attorney's report.
bills are making their way through the process. Some bills have made it through the Senate and the House to the governor's office. They're starting to get the approvals. The governor has 60 days from the day they're formally sent to him to act before they become law automatically. It's still a little early for some of these, but I suspect by maybe the September meeting we'll have a little more clarity and definition on some of them. But I can't tell you a lot. I can't tell you a lot more yet.
That it?
That's it.
Thank you, Brian. Treasurer's report. Oh, I'm sorry, Chief.
I only have a couple things for you guys. Carl, as I brought you up to speed on the repair status of the engine that caught fire in the station due to electrical problems based on some work that was done on the vehicle. Currently, right now, we did report this to insurance, so that way we're covered under that. However, the vendor who we do use for the service so far has made whole on everything and replaced everything free of charge. We're waiting on one more part for a radio cable that was burned up, but that should be in within hopefully this week, and that should be taken care of.
From what I understood, I had a chance to talk to the guy I was working on, is that due to the diligence and attention of the staff, I don't know which of the firefighters saw the smoke coming out, but his quick attention to that, I think, saved us a big disaster, so we can make kudos to your staff.
Absolutely.
Definitely taking care of that.
The second thing is we now have Wildland 4, which is the Wildland firefighting engine sitting out in the bay. That is a Mavis Division asset, similar to the light tower. Wildland 4 is deployed on grass fires, and actually, most recently, it was sent up to Gurnee on their propane fire that they had because of the foam that vehicle does carry. With that being said, since we now have that as a new division asset, which we are allowed to use within our own community, so it is somewhat of a backup engine for us, we are going to go ahead and have the light tower relocated to another department, so that way we don't have two division assets sitting in our station. Last thing I have is I've been meeting frequently with Drew Urban, village manager of Lake Bluff, as well as Chief Graff for about the last 2 years, and seeing ways that we can develop different programs, different ways of saving money, and how we can work, better together as neighbors. They approached us approximately 3 months ago to become a part of an ICMA study that they're doing and sharing, where we've sent over a significant amount of data as far as call response times, a ton of data out of Firehouse, and they're expecting that report to come back within about the next 2 months.
Could you elaborate on what ICMA is?
ICMA is the International City and County Managers Association, and what they do is they look into government programs, different government agencies. They'll do studies, they'll do research on different ways to make your department or village better off and better run. Tell you where you're deficient and tell you where you're ahead of the game. This study we're hoping to bring back is show call time with our two departments, us going to them coming to us, in order for us to better staff the department in the future. So as soon as we get the results back from that, I'll let you guys know.
Is this in connection at all with the study, the ICMA study that was done with, what was started with Highland Park, Lake Forest, Lake Bluff?
This is something
Or it's a
completely
separate
separate.
study?
This is something completely separate that Drew and David started on their own, to kind of get a basic knowledge for their own village, and they kind of extended it out to us to see, where we're at. So they're hoping to have the data back in the next 2 months.
Is there a cost involved with this study?
For us? No. It's
Initiated by Lake Bluff?
initiated by Lake Bluff. So we're able to piggyback on it and see some benefit of it. So they're hoping about the next 2 months.
Have you found a place to store that trailer?
As of right now, no, we have not.
Okay, as we get toward fall and have to think about that white stuff again, if we still need a place, we can put it up by my place over the winter, if that
Okay.
aids at all in finding a spot to
Okay,
just,
perfect.
get it out of the way for snow removal. Don't want to talk about snow in August, but.
And that's all I have right now.
Great, thank you, Chief. Now, Dan, I know you're chomping
Chopping at the bit. Okay, this is the balance sheet. You have to give me a little bit of latitude in this. This is my first big crack at it here. So in Lake Forest Bank and Trust, we have $31,110.81. The Northern Trust, we have a station reserve of $36,354.38. Northern Trust Capital Investment, we have $162,018.71. Northern Trust Checking, we have $224,973.71, and we have a huge petty cash of $29.05. Total checkings and savings, we have $486.68. That's pretty much it. We pay bills out of that, and I don't think there's really much more to say than that. Huh? Now, on to the P&L. Next month, do you have one or no? Did you guys get one? Okay, I'm sorry. All right. So I think all of these pretty much run true to course as you're a quarter of the way through. Some of the items are heavy. When you look at like the liability funds are at 52%. Some of them that are 52% are just simply front-loaded because we paid them up front for the year. I don't think there's anything on page one that really jumps out. Everything's running about 25% except for the front-loaded items. EMS support and training, one's at 4%, the other's at 34%, again, fairly close. Contractual operations, again, that's front-loaded, that's why it's at 51%. And the liability insurance is at 97% because it gets paid.
Yeah, we paid the premium on that
Right at the beginning of the year. So that's pretty much that. Then if you go over to profit and loss, on the fire protection district, again, I don't really need to run through all of these. You can see that we're where we need to be. There's nothing that's outside of the 25% of where we should be at this time of the year. From small tools and ground ladders, all of that's right where it should be. Checks to be approved.
Oh, you need to get a motion to approve the treasurer's.
Oh, before the.
Yes, that's the warrants, that's not the next time.
Okay. May I have a motion to approve Oh, that's right, George. Go ahead.
Can I have a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
I make a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
I'll second.
That. That's a roll call vote. Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Grum?
Aye.
Trustee Snowden? Aye.
Okay, checks to be approved, again, exciting stuff. Public Risk, Northern Trust, Comcast, North Shore Sanitary District, Paul Conway Shields, that's Rescue Tools. That looks appropriate. I went over that invoice. Eric, any comment on that, or John? Okay. Payroll, that's all the station wages, right on down. The Visa Northern Trust bill, that gets split up. I have a further split for that if anybody wants to see it. I go over those invoices. ComEd, Otterson Brits, for our legal services, fleet services is fuel. North Shore Gas, City of Lake Forest, that was final payment
on the
ambulance service.
Of course,
correct?
I just found another bill from them, the box, that was duplicated the one we already paid.
Okay.
We don't owe them anymore.
Right, okay, so that finishes up with them. Northern Trust, that's our loan on the building. Lake County Public Works water bill, and then we got payroll. One Air is for the SCBA. American Gases Corporation, again, EMS support. Burris Equipment was for small tools, $5. Home Depot's a split, which there's a separate bill that shows that. Intersecurity Systems, contractual obligations, shared and auto parts. Treadlock was for a tire. To me, for the reimbursement of the Peoria Conference. Robert Grum, reimbursement of the Peoria Conference. Accurate Backflow is our testing of our backflow protector and the sprinklers. Rain crap. Groot is garbage. North Shore Sanitary District. AmeriGas, this is 2 months' worth. Chicago Tribune Metal Group, Media Group is for the posting of our budget. City, that's the new Costco bill now. We'll break down on that. Countryside Fire, that's for dispatch. Otterson Brits again. These are all kind of repetitive. Food Services, Visa, North Shore Gas, Comcast, ComEd. So the total is this is for 2 months, is $72,900.86.
Yeah, you can get a motion to approve the outstanding invoices.
So moved.
Second that.
I will second that.
Roll call vote, trustee Grum? Trustee Rogers?
Aye.
Trustee Snow? Aye.
Thank you. I'll get better at it as months go by.
The next item on the agenda is a roles, responsibilities, and authority discussion and action. Bob, I'll let you introduce that, because it's your...
As the newest member of the board, obviously I'm trying to get acclimated to how the board functions, the roles and responsibilities, and who plays what role, and who has what responsibilities. Part of my training in Peoria as a new trustee member delved into a lot of these things, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear and that we're looking at all this the same way. The board is at the top of the hierarchy. We are responsible for the district and seeing to it that we fulfill our obligations to the people that we represent, as well as making sure that the fire department functions and carries on, provides the services that they need to provide. It's made up of 3 equal members who just have different jobs that they perform as part of the board. The board appoints a chief who is responsible for the actual operations of the fire department. When it comes to things like contracts, agreements, things like that the board pays for and has to sign for, just from conversations I've had, I'm not sure that was always done through the board. I think some of the agreements were drawn up or worked out with the fire chief, which certainly plays a role in that. And I'm just thinking that in the future, when we look to, say, like with e-dispatch or with the ambulance service, if we're renewing contracts or whatever, that there should be a board presence that basically runs that process with the assistance and guidance of the chief and his input. Is that not correct? Is that how it should be done?
You have latitude. You can do it, or you could designate the chief to handle it on your own. I mean, because you may have other things to do, whereas it may make more sense to have a single point of contact when you're trying to arrange something. But typically, if you have a contract, it would be approved by the board. Even if it's coordinated by the chief's going to come back to you for approval. Ultimately, you have to approve it.
Okay.
You know, so, but it doesn't mean that the coordination couldn't be done by him. In some cases, auto aid agreements are a classic example. Auto aid agreement is a contract. But in most districts, the board doesn't want to get their hands involved in auto aid agreements. They just tell the chief.
When you're dealing with MABUS or auto agreement, that's usually agreements done with the fire chiefs through their association.
Right. So it kind of depends on the topic you're talking about. Ultimately, it has to be through you, but at some point, that's why you got the chief.
Right, so if I'm reading this right, or getting your point right, if John's gonna meet with Libertyville for the ambulance contract, you're either saying or would like at least the availability of the option for one of the 3 of us to go with.
A board presence, yes.
To go with.
Board member.
I don't see anything.
Well, I think that has to be on a case-by-case basis. As far as the Libertyville
Yeah,
contract,
just
the board has already approved John, to negotiate that. And again, my personal experience in the corporate world, 30 years in the corporate world, is that generally early on, you have a point person who doesn't have the authority to sign that contract by any means, but they know what is really about. They're often the subject matter expert. Because early on, there is just a lot of give and take, back and forth. And then they bring, they get some guidance from their boards to what they're looking for, they bring that back. But I think in every case, it's somewhat different, so that I don't think it's at all inappropriate if, if we have a new contract, the first thing is we have to designate someone, authorize someone to do that. And if you feel that a board presence will be important, then I think that's perfectly reasonable. But, I think it's really gonna kind of depend from the auto A to be more, to, like I said, the Libertyville one, I think, again, it has to do with those, as you know, there's very personal relationships sometimes, it's the chief community and things like that. But they can sit down together and kind of come to a meeting of the minds before we get all official about it, so that then we know, what kind of works, what kind of doesn't work. So I think it really depends.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful, and at least I know for me, it would be good for me to be at least seated at something like that to see, exactly how that process is being run. So as the time comes, if those type of things arise, I'd like to see a member of the board involved.
Well, I think we can probably be a little bit more, follow process a little bit better as things come from contract. Do be a little bit more official about designating, the authority to do that. Because, again, the same thing, I'll get back to this in a minute. As individual board members, we have no authority whatsoever. Right. The board has authority, you, Dan, and I have no authority whatsoever. So even there, it would be wrong for any one of us to go out and try to start a negotiation or something with, one of our neighbors if the board hadn't actually discussed it and authorized that to happen. So I think we just need to be a little bit more formal about that, and then at that time, then we can, so if you want to be involved, then absolutely.
Yeah, I would just ask that as those things come up, if we could be made aware of it, and then we could decide whether, it would be appropriate for a board member to be involved.
Right. I think I think, we've done that with the Libertyville one. You brought it to the board did vote to, allow you to begin the negotiations, to extend the contract. And similarly with Lake Bluff, you did come to the board in the past, and we basically blessed and said, yes, John, please move this forward. At some point, we may need more involvement. I think that's going to be an agenda item to discuss.
And as, with the Libertyville contract, I just, speaking as far as that one goes, I didn't have the mayor or the village administrator from Libertyville sitting down with Rich Crowley. It was Rich Crowley and I working out terms of what we thought was fair. And then in turn, we would take that back to our respective boards and bosses. And, that's how that one worked out. It wasn't over, something overnight. It was probably a good 6-month process that it took.
Sure.
Back and forth, before we came to a point to where.
That's probably a good rule of thumb, is that when, at the point where, on the other side, if they started to involve of the village administrator, that's when you need to involve the board.
Absolutely.
Because that's the kind of the balance there. Okay. The one thing, to sort of tag along on this, Brian pulled together the sample rules that I think really addresses all the things you were kind of asking about. So I tried to get those out in time for people to read. I don't know.
Yeah, I did read it, and I was looking at the part where it talks about the appointment of a committee.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's kind of what brought it to my mind, was that, maybe that would be a good approach. But again, I think each situation needs to be looked at.
Right. And you got to be a little careful with about the Open Meetings Act. So if you and the chief go to meet with, that's not a meeting.
No.
if we, as I understand with the committee, if we put together a committee with a board member, that is now you have to have minutes and you have to announce it, so there's gonna be times where that's appropriate, and other times where it's just, one trustee with the chief. But, I would like to consider adopting these rules. I don't know if you feel comfortable, we haven't done that.
Are you talking about
The whole thing?
packet? I would like to delay it until
Okay.
next
Can we do that next month?
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's make sure we get that.
Yes.
And one other thing that, since we're talking about kind of board governance right here, and I've heard some comments about this, and it's bothered me a little bit at times too, and that it has to do with how we do agenda preparation. Again, every member of the board has a right to put an item on the agenda. And what we typically do is, the secretary will, we have our standard normal month-to-month things, which, our template, if you will, sends that out. Anything that, like you said, I just ask that we put this on for next month, so that would be it. Sends it to the trustees, to the chiefs, to our attorneys, and say, is there any items that you would like? And we put them on there. And sometimes, as you can see, the agenda items are bullet points, which I think is perfectly appropriate, but I would like to ask that if somebody, if one of the board members or the chiefs wants to put something on the agenda, that please provide a little write-up on what their intention is for this, because I think that will help in terms of, once the agenda is posted, members of the public have questions of any of us, will know what it's about, be able to speak to that. And I think then also we can be better prepared ourselves for when we're coming into the meeting to discuss what that is. So I would ask if we could make that a practice, and also to prepare a board packet, if you will. I tried to do that this time. Any documents that we know we're going to be discussing, to send them out along with the agenda. So the treasurer's report, these potential rules. But again, we try to make an effort to make ourselves better prepared when we come into this meeting. That we have all the materials ahead of time. That we have.
And I apologize, I didn't intentionally not get those, the treasurer's report to you guys. I thought it was in an email and I was incorrect.
And also a little bit better understanding of what the agenda, what it is that you really want to accomplish with an agenda items. If that's something you just kind of a little bit of words or.
It's really the board's decision on what you put on the agenda.
Yeah.
The only caution I'd offer is that we should, I echo your point about it should be sufficiently descriptive so people understand what you're talking about, but be careful about what you're saying. For example, if you're going to discuss something, say you're going to discuss something, if you think you're going to take action, or you're going to take action, then you say discussion and possible action if you think you may, or if you know you will, discussion and action. When it comes time to do our truth and taxation determination, I'll guarantee you you'll pass the resolution because the law requires it. And when it comes time for the levy ordinance, you'll pass it. So that'll say discussion and action.
I'm the one that started and recommended to Bob when he took over as secretary. I put discussion and action on everything to let it be discussed, and if the board so chose after speaking to you guys to take action on something, whether it was to buy a screwdriver or pass a set of rules. If it was just discussion, and we said, yeah, this is a good idea, then we had to table and put it on next month. If we put discussion and action on items, doesn't mean we have to take action, it means we can take action. So that's why I'm the one that recommended when Bob took over as secretary to put that on the items, to allow the option to accomplish things in one meeting versus two, because sometimes there's very minor items, and if you put discussion, then there you stop. So that's why most of these items have discussion and action.
And that's fairly standard practice.
It is
Right.
very common. I know we did it in Lake Forest, I know Lake Bluff does it. And again, it's not that absolutely are taking action. It's giving you the opportunity to do it should the need arise. So, you know, I guess that might not have been clear to a lot of you that's how we handle that. But don't just naturally assume that if it says discussion and action, that there will be action taken.
I guess what I was looking for is, you know, for example, discussion and action on joint services with Lake Bluff. It wasn't a discussion and action, but joint services with Lake Bluff doesn't necessarily mean a whole heck of a lot to a lot of people.
Right, and since I was sending the agenda, the two of you and the two of you, we've had this discussion about Lake Bluff as far as Knollwood supplies more manpower and covers the calls during the day. And my concern has been, I'm gonna use the word equal compensation. Have we moved to item 11 now?
I'm sorry?
Are we in?
No,
We kind of rolled into item 11.
Well,
Are we done with item 10? I'll just wait on item 11.
no, I'm really looking to, you know, I'm making some suggestions as to
Yeah.
how the agenda would be prepared going forward. And I just want to get a sense from the board if that.
I guess my feelings are, as secretary putting the agenda together, if you send me something, whatever it is, I'm gonna put it in.
I'm fine with that, but I guess what I.
But my concern is, I think, and Brian was touching on this, if you start to make it too explanatory, you can run into some real problems.
Yes, and I'm not even suggesting that. I'm suggesting that you send to the distribution, the board members, the chiefs, just a little bit of a description of what it is. I have no problem with the way this agenda is, but
It's more or less.
it makes me more prepared for it, and also if I get a,
Right,
you know, the
I
agenda
got
gets
you.
posted.
It's
I get a
no
question.
different than as far as the e-dispatches thing, as far as you guys want to know what's going on. When I have a resident come up to me and say, hey, what's this thing on the agenda for joint services with Lake Bluff?
Gotcha.
And I'm sitting there going, I have no idea. So it's a matter of informing us at least, so we can be properly prepared. And then if somebody does ask,
Well,
we can go ahead.
the other thing too, especially for you, John, if there's something that's put on there, and I'm happy to, you know, if it's my item, to make a note on there, if it comes out, just send an email back, hey, whoever put number 11, give me a call, I'd like to discuss this with you. Sometimes having a 2-minute discussion is more advantageous between the two of us than me trying to write out what I'm trying to say, because I'm probably not gonna explain it well anyhow, and you and I are gonna have 4 questions back and forth anyhow. So, I mean, don't ever hesitate if there's something on there. I know if there was something that you guys put on there, purchase a new fire truck, I would probably call you and say, what exactly are you talking about?
Right.
So,
Would it be inappropriate on the draft agenda to initial each one of these as to who sent it to me to be discussed?
I was gonna suggest that. It's not, I've seen it before where they'll say, if, like, the treasurer's report, every month you're gonna have a treasurer, guarantee you're gonna have a treasurer's report, you don't have to do that. But like, if number 10 was suggested by Carl, what they'll do is they'll put brackets at the beginning, KS, at the beginning or end, with the initials of who was the one. So if he has a question, you know,
He knows where to go.
at least he knows who to reach out and touch, reach out and touch with the question for clarification.
okay.
All right, we can do that.
Mr. President, can I make a comment if I could? In regards to trustee Drum's, which I agree with, I think there's stuff, but I guess how do the chiefs know what you guys want to be involved in and not? We talked about, we went from e-dispatch, which is a simplistic, predetermined company draft, to talking about ambulance service. That's a broad spectrum. The
Yeah.
district, in fact, has over 25 contracts and then some. We enter in a contract to buy sets of bunker gear, that's a contract. You're gonna spend $5,000 of taxpayers' money. So what is the process? Do you want an email sent to the president that says, other than, I think at the end of the day, we all know what we're talking about here. If we want to have a discussion about joint services with Lake Bluff, well, then the chief and one of the board members should go have those discussions. Or talk about an email service, that makes sense, because you're spending money up and above. Number one, you're gonna spend more than the $20,000 cap that we all know we have to have. And number two, it's liabilities of the district. I guess I disagree with the whole, ARA agreement. That's a district concern. We're pledging to send one of our apparatuses, the district-owned, taxpayer-owned piece of equipment, to another person's town. So I think the board might want to know, because that's basically alluding what Trustee Rogers is saying with the joint services of Lake Bluff. If we're going to, we don't have the authority to pledge this piece of equipment. At the end of the day, it has to be approved by the board.
That's correct. I
So
mean,
the
as a
ARAs is different
contract-
than mutual aid. Mavis is, we've all pledged that. We signed a contract.
It's a contract.
You guys signed that contract.
That's right.
The chief didn't.
No, no,
So-
I guess that's what I'm looking at, is if we have to sign it, or we have to pay for it, then we should know
Absolutely.
ahead of time.
But I guess that's, you pay for everything. So I guess what I'm saying to you is that the taxpayers fund the money and give us the money. You guys are just the executors of the money. So
Correct.
I guess the process, do you want that to go through trustee Grom? Do you want that to go through trustee Rogers or yourself? We get a contractual information on something that doesn't require us to have a meeting per se. Do you want that sent to you?
Well, are you talking about contracts that need to be signed?
Well, everything needs to be signed because we just looked at the e-dispatch, it has to be signed each year. The ambulance contract.
But there's not gonna be a negotiation in that, I guess. So I guess if it, for me, I'm sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead and finish your thought.
I'm sorry, because a retail purchase, while you could consider that a contract, retail purchasing is under the purchasing policy, right? But to me, I mean, a contract is a contract where we actually have a legal document that has to be signed. In which case, what we're talking about is the negotiation of the contractual terms. If they're very, very fire department operational kinds of things, it makes sense for the chief to do. But it's also come to the board. The board needs to be aware of it. The board has to approve it, vote to actually approve that contract. Other types of contracts, I think, are going to be much more impactful to the board and to the district, and therefore the district would like to be involved, or the trustees be more involved in the actual negotiations. So, but the small, you know, I'm not sure I see where the small stuff comes in.
All
What you're concerned about.
All expenditures are approved by the board.
Correct.
Right? Even your bunker gear. Because when you did that budget presentation, which was nicely done, I mean, we included this is the line for bunker gear and this is what we're going to do, and ultimately, it's approved by them in the budget. So that's been approved. Or if you had these little one-odds and sods come off, you know, the truck blew up and we need to spend $7,000 to fix it, you come to them with the problem, and they say, yes, do it. Well, you still have board approval. It doesn't mean they're gonna get into the weeds of negotiating the repairing of the truck. I mean, that's.
Well, that's the question I was asking because it
Yeah.
didn't sound that way, because you go from e-dispatch, which is a predetermined contract, we just sign it each year and we share it, by the way, with Lake Bluff, it's not.
Right.
The contract is actually not with us, the contract was with the village of Lake
Well, I'm
Bluff.
saying, as from a contractual perspective, I'm not aware that there is a contract with the Rockland Fire Protection District. We get a bill, we pay a bill.
Well, you sign, yes, but
But that's not a
essentially.
contract, that's just a retail purchase. There may very well be, as you say, a contract with Lake Bluff that we are sharing with them. In that case, that's their contract.
Well, for clarification, there is a signed contract, that's why I'm asking the question. Typically, the board has authorized the chief to make that determination. You guys know about it, but it's a contract. It's no different than, essentially, when you sign off on an expenditure for making a repair in a fire truck, that's a contract. You're pledging that this individual will complete the work as said, and the chief is always, been authorized. Now,
Did we
again,
see that contract before we entered into it?
of course.
Okay, so
Yeah.
there was something that we signed, so we have copies of that contract.
Yeah, and
That's-
when
yeah,
I say that is that, again, every purchase is essentially a contract, it is reviewed, it is, because I see that typically to a certain amount, you guys know about it because it's put in the budget. We wouldn't sign off on it if it wasn't, if it's a larger purchase, we wouldn't sign paperwork for a fire truck, the board would.
If hypothetically, the e-dispatch contract team doing it went up 35%, you guys would probably come to us and say, hey, listen, we've got this e-dispatch, it's going up 35%, how do you want us to proceed? Whereas if John calls and says, hey, we blew out the left rear tire on E44, I'm getting a new tire. I'm assuming that he knows where to get fire truck tires, and he's gonna get a fire truck tire, and that's gonna really be the end of that. That's more of an information. If it's something that's a contract that you think it would be beneficial for us to know about, to act on, I think common sense in 98%, 99.9% are gonna dictate what you do. I haven't seen any evidence of you hiding a contract, considering we have to sign it anyhow. So I think it's a little bit of much to do about nothing. As long as we work on that, and when there's things you're gonna go and meet with people to work on contracts, whatever, like you just said, what we're gonna talk about in number 11, then I think it's totally appropriate that one of the three go with whomever, John, and John may say, you know what, I'm gonna be working, I'm gonna have Lieutenant Measley go, so Bob, you're all right going with Lieutenant Measley to meet with Lake Bluff. Then that's the way that goes, if everybody's good with it, so. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay, I think that's.
So we kind of folded right into my item number 11. John, I would like, your schedule is the hardest because you have your real job, to try to set up a meeting with Drew, and if you want, I guess, the chief and one of the gang of 3. I guess what I'd like to see is just an initial meeting to discuss the fact that I feel as representing of Rockland Fire Protection District, we're doing a little more than what we're getting with covering a lot of these calls from what you guys have told me, and stop me if I'm wrong at any point. I'm just looking to open up a discussion and let the whole board know what Lake Bluff is thinking and what you guys are thinking to make it equal, so that I guess the way, and this is not gonna be right, but hear me out. If you're staffing the station, and I'm pulling just completely broad hours here, 8 to 4, Monday through Friday, and you're staffing it with 2 people, and in those hours, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, we're also covering all the calls for Lake Bluff in the industrial park or wherever. And again, these are pretty broad details that we could discuss with Lake Bluff, saying if we're gonna staff it with 2 people, would you be willing to give us some compensation for one of our staff, since we're answering all the calls? That's not exactly what happens, but I'm hoping I'm presenting my general idea to you of where I'm at, so.
I understand what you're saying, but there's also other things that come into play with this that I don't think are being taken into consideration.
Okay.
Their burn tower. We have unlimited access to their burn tower. We did not pay a dime to have that burn tower built. That is a resource that we utilize probably at least once a week with our probationary training. That they don't charge us anything for the use of that. Would we be able to go out and build one ourselves? No. So there's ways that we make up, the differences per se, as well as they do come to us. They do come to us at night a lot when they're, what I'll say, have more of their people in their town after business hours. But yes, the calls and the numbers don't lie as far as the difference. There is a difference, but I think it's also made up in other ways. But if you'd like to have a meeting with them or one of the board, sure.
I think it would be beneficial just to see where everybody's at and get a feel for where they see the future being. I mean, they obviously have a continuously growing industrial park over there, and you guys are running over there during the week, say a fair amount, if that's a good way to put it. And it is our our liability, our firefighters, our trucks, our fuel, and I just want to make sure that it's fair for the residents of Rockland Fire Protection District, that if we're supplying services that it's some type of a balancing out between the 2 communities.
Did you want to go ahead and reach out to them and?
Well, that's why I'm asking you tonight. Would you rather reach out to David, or would you want one of us to reach out to Drew to set something up? You're the one that has the toughest schedule, because, like I said, you have your shift and your real job, so I don't want to try to schedule something.
I can probably tell you that, this is just my guess, that they would probably want to wait to see where that study comes back.
Okay.
Like I said, that's probably about a month or 2 months out from the last I was told. But yeah, yes, I mean, I can, if you want to reach out to Drew, that's fine, or if one of the board wants to reach out.
I just offer a couple observations. I think the IFCA study would be helpful to have, but I think also in the meantime, perhaps working on, you know what the service calls are. I mean, you track them all the time.
I can tell you.
But understanding what the other office sets are, like, you know, the training and how, the benefits that you get, you know, and not only for your use of the tower, but the joint training that you got going on too. You know, and maybe by, you know, if you could kind of come up with a little cheat sheet that says, here's our service, here's our calls and responses, and here's what the other offsets are, and now what does this IFCA study say? I mean, that, you don't know what that's gonna say. And that, to me, that kind of seems like the loose gun on deck until you know what that says.
Right.
That could tell you a lot, that could tell you little.
Right.
But
I always like to see, you want to reach out and have one of us reach out to Drew and just say,
Well, I would-
at some point, we want to get together, would you like to wait until the study is done? What do you think?
Well, the first thing, I would prefer to have the chief make the arrangements, because he's been working with him and has that contact, rather than one of us.
Well, that's what I said as far as his schedule.
I'm not quite you know.
I think it's a good idea to go ahead. I don't see any harm in meeting with them and discussing some of these figures from the data that we have and just kind of see where they're at.
Are you in our data? You want us to run their data? Is that what you're saying? Our
Well,
data?
I think it's data that they probably already have already. If they've done the ICMA study, they're already providing all of that data, you know, which you have given us in terms of the stats on calls and times and, you know, who's responding to what.
Well, they're looking at it in more, that's the thing, I mean, we can certainly do that, that's what they're doing. ICMA is actually gonna tell you, they're looking at how many personnel at what time, because again, right now, I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure out, obviously, you see your trucks over there, because we're all up in the daytime, you see the truck go over there, yeah, you dispatch, you know what goes over there. What we don't know is what's the return in the middle of the night, because nobody's sitting on the street corner waiting for the fire truck to come down. So, I think that's what the chief's saying, is that all this data that's out there, we can certainly do it, we gave it to them, but they're analyzing it. So, before we, just a suggestion, before we actually sit down and start telling them, this is what I feel you guys should pay or what our fair share is, wouldn't we want to know exactly what those figures are first? As an example, we're sending 3 during the daytime, but they're also sending people, and during the daytime, they're also sending personnel to us. And in the middle of the night, when there's 2 or 3 volunteers that are stationed at our station, they might be sending a full engine company, so what is the trade?
Yeah, my opinion on this would be that it depends on what you want to talk to them about. If you really do want to get down to kind of a negotiation on what's fair, then I would strongly recommend waiting until the study's done. If it's just sort of reaching out and just kind of exploring opportunities, you know, again, we're doing a lot in a shared service kind of model with them, just again, bringing one of the trustees into that, then I think that would be perfectly reasonable. But I think I would stay away from, you know, conversations on how do we true this up until there's some data.
Right, and I guess I look at it, and this is just a layman's look at it versus the way you guys look at it. If Lake Bluff had an engine go down tomorrow and we could, if you guys could help them out by giving them an engine, you would do that. And no one's looking for a fee back on that. What I'm looking at is our payroll. What I'm looking at is the fact that we're staffing the station more than we ever have before. And that's wonderful for the residents here. I approved it, I had no problem with it, you explained it, that's fine. That being said, when we're doing that and you guys are running the calls because they don't have anybody, I think that's great too. I guess I'm just trying to find a happy medium and saying, hey, if we're gonna cover these calls during the day, and you guys say we can do it because we have the staff, and depending on your data for that, that's great. Then would you help just offset our payroll a little bit with that? The burn station, I get that. And I know that if we had something to help them train with, you guys would automatically offer that as well. I think that's something that you guys have been really instrumental in. And you've said it probably a dozen times in the last 3 years, that the cooperation of working together has never been better. And I think that's great. I'm just looking at it, I guess, from a little bit of a finance end, from the amount of payroll that we're putting out and the people that are here, and when we're answering these calls in Lake Bluff, I'm just asking for a little help on the backside from them, and if they could look at it and get back to us. It's not a demand of, if you don't help, we're not coming. That's not what I'm saying at all. So I'm just looking to have a real open discussion with Drew and John, and I don't care, Bob's probably more qualified than anybody, or more qualified than me, maybe not more qualified than you, Carl. But anyhow, one of us to just go and just say, hey, you know, can we kind of take a look at this over the next few months and see where we're at and think about it? You know, just very informal.
You know, and I think we're saying the same thing. I guess what I'm saying is that we make that statement, we're covering them.
Mhm.
Well, that's not necessarily the case because they're also sending people, and that's what the studies, you know, are supposed to show is how many times did Norwood actually cover this call that Lake Bluff didn't have a response for because they didn't have personnel. This is the kind of things they're looking at. The other side of that is we respond to the industrial park because we're closer and it's interest public safety. I get what you're saying. The other thing we have to look at is that of all the opticons of the streetlights that are maintained, Lake Bluff pays a larger component of that opticon. Oftentimes when there's a repair, they don't even send us a bill. They don't ask for any money. They ask us for the capital, compensation when they replace them all. But there's a yearly contractual fee with Mead Electric that we never even see.
Right, but aren't most of those opticons in the village?
Yeah, but we're benefiting the service. I mean, obviously. the
No,
light
I
changes-
understood, but I mean, anybody else that comes through with an opticon uses it as well. I get where you're coming from, so.
But I mean, I guess I look at it as how many times in a day do we have to use that one Jack Barker 176? So I don't disagree with what you're saying. All I'm saying is that to come in there with factual information, I think, is our best advocate than just coming up, because what does that mean? They're also sending people. There's a cost of them sending volunteers, which they get paid. Those guys get paid as well.
Right, but am I incorrect, and I may be, that there are, when we have a call during the day and we're staffed here, Lake Bluff is or is not automatically dispatched?
They're automatically, if it's their call, we're both
No,
dispatched.
if it's our call,
Automatically dispatched.
they're automatically dispatched even if we have people on staff?
That's correct.
Okay. And-
Because that comes into other areas. You got NFPA requirements, which again, we try
I'm
to
just
strive to
asking.
do. No, I'm answering your question. So yes, any fire-related call in Norwood, Lake Bluff is dispatched with us. Any ambulance call in target areas that we've agreed upon in contract or in reciprocal aid, they're automatically dispatched. So they are coming here. Yes, the observation is that we go to Lake Bluff more than Lake Bluff comes to us. It's because Lake Bluff runs more calls than we do. And the industrial park is a huge component of
Right,
that.
and we're
area.
staffing the station.
Correct. We are paying staff. What we're doing is basically an assured response, no different than a full-time fire department.
Right,
Lake Bluff is
we're still-
volunteers, there's no requirements, but they do have personnel that do stay up at the station. And
We're
are on
basically a paid on-call department.
call. And so are they,
And
but
aren't they still mainly volunteer?
they're paid for the time that those guys are on call. Volunteers, there's nobody at the station. They do have individuals that on their own go up there. Again,
Paid on premise. They're
ours
paid
is
on call, we're paid on premise.
our response here is a structured response. We have shifts, guys sign up for them. We
Right.
actually place them in a schedule. Lieutenant Holston is that.
Right.
A scheduler puts those guys there so the station is staffed. That's the only difference. Assured response versus relying upon people's availability to come down the station. So, but they're still sending people. It's not like they're not coming at all to their own calls or vice versa.
Okay.
So, just to make sure everybody's understanding
Okay.
of the system, if you will.
Like I said, I just want to make sure we're being treated fairly
Sure.
for the amount of payroll that we put out to assure responses.
And I would say, to get one of the trustees engaged now with the conversations going, I think is because as you say, the sort of test I was using earlier, you've done a lot of work with Chief Brad, but you're now starting to involve the village administrator. Probably time for one of us to be with you. On the other hand, as far as starting to talk to them about this, I would strongly recommend that we wait until the study is done. They have data that we can sit down and look at that data and say, yeah, here's how we need to work this out. But to get one of the trustees involved now, I think would be useful. That's my opinion.
Okay, so I'm fine with it. That's great. So if you want to set something up at some point, whether it's informal or whatever, and then once the data comes in, sit down and walk through it and then report back to the board, I think that would be great.
I don't think that's anything, we don't need a motion, right? That's just something we'll do.
Consensus of the board.
Consensus of the board, right?
All right, that moves us on then to item 12, discussion and action on investigation of contracting services and or consolidation. Yes.
Yeah, I guess this is the one that seemed to raise the most concern from most of you here. And it was not my intention to do that. Again, the discussion and action thing is just a common procedure. And I thought it was clear, or that the key word there was investigation. And this is where I'm talking about, if we're going to be able to make any kind of an intelligent decision as to where this department needs to go or what needs to happen, we need to gather that information. Because without it, we can't even begin to start to talk about it. And again, we're not going to know if what we're doing now is the best service for the best price, and we need to continue to build on that, or is there another, solution that we can look at that might provide as good a service at a more reasonable price and still provide the people with what they need. We don't know that yet, and that's why I wanted to kind of discuss that in terms of how do we begin this whole process? How do we start to gather this information so that we can make these decisions? And I just thought that, the easiest way to do that is to, start to reach out to our communities, neighboring communities that would be in a position to provide service for us. And then find out if they're even interested in pursuing that. If we're having communities say to us, you know what, we're really not interested in doing that, we've got our hands full here, that solves a lot of the issues, and it starts to narrow things down so that we can make a decision.
And that's exactly what happened with Libertyville. Thanks to John's hard work with Libertyville.
And that was a brilliant move.
You literally saved this district, what is it, $80,000 a year? Is that the rough number that we've saved by changing from Lake Forest to Lake Bluff? And that was by simply investigating with Libertyville, and it turned out they were interested.
That, I think, is a very different situation, and that is a change of vendors. That was not outsourcing existing services that are supplied by the district directly. I very much disagree with that approach of going and talking to neighbors. I think that smells very much of a solution looking for a problem. I think what you have to start with is doing a baseline of our operations here, to do a 5, 10, 15-year projection of operations, projected revenues, projected expenses, critical events that you may see happening, so that we know if it turns out that after doing those studies that what we are currently doing will not likely be viable in the future, then it's time to look for solutions. And I think you also have to define your objective. What is your objective? In that case, it's survival. And I think the board has to be very, very solid on what is the objective. What are we trying to do here? Are we just trying to get lower expenses? And clearly, and I have been involved in many outsourcing projects in my career, and done wrong, they are a disaster. If you think you're going to get something much less expensive than what you got, if you don't do your homework, you're going to end up paying more in the long run. That's certainly, I think, a big risk here. We operate this department. We control the expenses. If we outsource this and go to a different department to provide those, we are at their mercy. You can get a contract, and it'll be a loss leader, I'm sure, because they'll love to have our business. And as soon as we don't have equipment or anything anymore, then they're going to, the prices are going to ratchet up. We sort of saw that with the Lake Forest ambulance, because the model they used was, here's the cost of providing it. No, we can't. It's unfair for the taxpayers of Lake Forest to pay that, so you're going to have to pay that. And we will be very, very much at that. So I think that there needs to be, if we're going, I'm not at all adverse to looking at things, but I think you have to, first of all, figure out what we're doing, what the risks of doing that are. And the other thing I would say right now is that in order to do this right, we'll take a tremendous amount of resources. We don't have the bandwidth to do it right now. We've got to deal with Hilltop and figure out how we're going to do that. We'll be working with Lake Bluff on the common services. And both of those are sort of prerequisites to having any view of the future. So to me, this is very much something that to do right needs a lot of resources. I don't believe we have the resources available to us now. It's a distraction for what we must take care of. And I would really like to postpone these, any investigations down the road to when we can really do it right. And that's my opinion on this.
I guess I'm not sure that we can run the risk of, once the Hilltop comes up, I mean, God only knows what that's going to do to us budget-wise. And I think if you wait until that point, it may be too late. It may be really tough to try and you may be forced into something that maybe you normally wouldn't have wanted to do, but now you have no choice. And I would hate to see that happen. I would like to know, I would like to have all the cards on the table ahead of time so that we know and we have those facts ahead of us before we get put in that position. I don't think that's difficult to do. I think, again, a lot of this might be a moot point once we talk to our neighbors. Because if they're not interested, then we know we need to buck up and proceed.
I really feel that's backwards. We have to know that we can't do it, and we can't do it reasonably before we go ask our neighbors to take it on. I mean, otherwise, what is the point? If it's not broken, you don't fix it, unless you really think you're gonna save some money, and that's important.
Well,
If that's the driver, then make it clear that that's the driver.
Well, I think we have an obligation to the taxpayers to provide the best service at the most cost-efficient numbers we can do. And we don't know what that is.
Sure you do.
Yes, we do. As it is what we are doing today. And again, unless there are existential risks to what we are doing, then I just don't see the driver for going and asking other departments what it would do, because again, and I'm not knocking them at all, if I'm the village manager in one of those places, I'm gonna look at that and I'm gonna make you a deal that you can't refuse. And then you're caught. And you've got really no leverage whatsoever. You're giving away your leverage the minute you do that. And also too, you're gonna go ask them what it costs to provide the services. There was a lot more to this. I mean, Andrew helped on this, guys. I mean, it's not just rolling the fire trucks and putting guys on it. There's inspections, there's all the other things that this fire protection district provides to its residents. There are also, it gets into some very tricky things with mutual aid. So I mean, it's just a very complex thing. You have to work those details out before you can make any logical request to a neighboring department. You've got to kind of really tell them what it is they're bidding on.
So there's two things that I think are set in stone right now. There's pending legislation and legislation that's been signed by the governor regarding fire districts. I don't have all the details on it now, but I think we will in the next 30 or 60 days. But I know the legislation has been signed. That's fact, and the fact is the push is to get rid of smaller districts.
Actually, it's to get rid of paper districts.
Okay, well, again, and I haven't seen the detail on it. Number two, and I personally feel it's in the 10 to 15 year outlier right now because of the state of the state, that I don't think you're gonna see the re-ramping of 176 and 41 this year, and I don't think you're gonna see it next year. And I don't think you're gonna see it in 5 years, and I would be kind of surprised if you saw it in 10 years. But I think at the 15-year mark, it probably becomes something that's more reasonable to believe could happen, and it's something that we're going to deal with whether we like to or not. The way I took this, the way I look at it, and again, Carl, I think you disagree with me, but you have basically four neighbors. You have Lake Bluff, Lake Forest, North Chicago, and Libertyville. To have and I'm calling it a preliminary discussion of, hey, would you guys ever be interested in sitting down and discussing possible shared service, consolidation of service? Would you have any interest in even talking with us on joining forces, sharing services, what's out there, what's available? that's what I'm looking for.
This is
And I'm gonna-
something that
and I'm- Hold on one second. If that question is given to North Chicago and they say, man, absolutely not, we have our hands full, okay, I mark them off the list. So it lets us know where we're going, because there's gonna be some, I think, some bad information coming down the pike with some of this legislation, and eventually with this building and this department. I'm not looking to make a change, and you know what, maybe after we've talked to Lake Bluff, and we've talked to Lake Forest, and we've talked to Libertyville, we go, you know what, we are better off to stay the course for the next 10 years and stay doing exactly what we're doing. But at least we've looked at it. That's all that I'm looking for right now, is to find out if there are any interested partners, whether it be a year from now. I agree with you, we have some stuff right on our plate in front of us, the next 3 to 6 months, maybe longer, that we simply have to take care of. I'll report quickly on the loan in a few minutes. The Hilltop, there's stuff that's right in front of us. But I think I think we're turning a blind eye to not at some point agree to have very preliminary talks with our neighbors. Just say, hey, long-term, you guys got any interest? You want to sit down and talk? Just to see if anybody's interested in working together.
I mean,
Maybe
as I
maybe I'm
mentioned at the
broadening
last
that.
meeting, Bob Kiley asked if we would be interested in participating in talks with Highland Park, Lake Forest, and Lake Bluff. And probably not until later in September. Would you be opposed to being a part of that?
It would depend on what the context of it is, very specifically what the context is. To Dan's point, I'm not opposed to doing what you say, right? I'm not opposed to that at all. I'm just saying two things. I don't think we can do it right now, to pick that up. And the other is that I think we need to do a fair amount of homework on our own to prepare ourselves to actually have meaningful discussions. So the way you phrased it, Dan, I think is fine, which is to reach out to them and you say, are you interested in working together with us? Are there opportunities that we can do things together? That's a lot different than picking up, the phone and calling Chief Cry at Libertyville and say, what would it cost for you to take over? That's what I'm really, really opposed to, doing what you're saying, we're much more open. Yes, I think that's reasonable. My only real concern on that, like I said, is timing, because I think we need to do some homework ourselves to be prepared for that. And this is a really difficult time in terms of a couple of things that we have on our table. And Bob, it depends on what is it that they want to talk about.
Well, I think everything's on the table. I think it's just the whole future of this area. Are there options out there that people would agree to and that would work well for jointly through the communities? And I think it would be foolish for us not to be involved in those discussions. Even if it's at some point we decide, you know what, this is not for us, we don't have a role to play here, and we pull out. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that either. But I think not to be there at the beginning would be a mistake.
And I don't want to have buyer's remorse, like you said, of committing to something and then turning around and saying, boy, they really took advantage of us. On the same token, I don't want to be in a situation where all of a sudden the end is imminently near for one of a multitude of different reasons that are coming legislatively and legally and whatever. I'm just saying, let me just finish, and I don't want somebody to say, boy, they're behind the 8 ball now. Now they're screwed, and we can really take advantage of them. I want to determine our own destiny.
I want to put, as far as I can see, and defer to Brian on this, as far as the legislative thing, that's kind of irrelevant. If the county takes an action to dissolve us, none of the things we're talking about here have any meaning, any help. They're just going to dissolve us, and then they'll figure out what to do with the carnage. So that piece of it just doesn't seem to really. Yes, that's something we have to be concerned about and pay attention to. But what we're talking about here, I don't think has any real impact.
I just want to be proactive and not reactive. That's all.
And I think that's fine, But again, there's a cost to being proactive, there's work we need to do, otherwise it's just a meaningless waste of time.
We've been very proactive over the last 2 years with Lake Bluff.
Yeah,
And
it's
that
not, yeah,
path
please
is-
don't read.
No,
Yeah,
I
that was not a
understand that.
shot taken.
No, I understand that, but I think also in these situations, if you rush something like this, there's a
Yeah,
lot of things you're gonna miss, and there's a lot of things you're not gonna think about. These things take time, this is not something you can just rush right into.
Absolutely.
And we have been looking at different options as far as jointly with Lake Bluff, because at least to me, it seems like the most logical option. We're two very similar departments, two very similar communities, and we work very, very well together. And we've looked at different ways as far as progressing things forward in the future.
No, I don't mean to even imply that this is a rapid process. I mean, we're talking months down the line. But at some point, you have to start the discussions. You have to start to get
But
the
that's what I'm saying, is
information
that's been going on already for the last 2 years with Lake Bluff,
with one community.
who we work with on a daily basis, hand in hand, yes.
Right, but there's other communities out there that surround us that may be interested in talking to us or possibly investigating some other possibilities. You don't know what those are until you ask, or until you start the discussion.
Well, I agree with what you're saying too. You don't want to miss an opportunity, but McGrath Consulting is one of the larger fire department leading consolidation groups. And their first statement here on the bottom says governing officials and the fire chief must meet to define their expectations for their future. So, it's all great to go meet, but wouldn't you want to know, do an analysis of what we're doing, so you know what to compare it to? When we're referencing the ambulance contract, we didn't just go in and say to Libertyville, we want an ambulance. We wrote down, the chief actually wrote down, this is what we're getting today. For this cost, the city of Lake Forest is providing one ambulance, 10 years or newer, ALS equipped with 2 trained firefighter paramedics. That was defined. So we took that contract, walked into Chief Grani's office, says, this is what we're getting today, and this is what we're getting it for.
Didn't it start out with, though, are you interested?
No, it literally went there of the conversation. The only reason why it came up in all is because Green Oaks annexed that property. So I can tell you, because I'm the longest standing member here, when Eric Goldberg was asking chief, there was discussions back and forth on that, and Libertyville did not want to entertain at that particular time conversation. So it only came after Green Oaks annexed that property that they came back and said, well, essentially, we're going to have something that is a customer of ours, so we would like to have discussions. And then,
Didn't we have Libertyville Ambulance Service before the Hilltop was annexed?
no, that was helped facilitate when the property and the annexation took place, because then there was an outreach, and that contract was defined. They just walked in and said, this is what we're getting. And they met the contract, says, well, we can do it for this, with 3 paramedics in the ambulance. So I guess that's the thing. I don't think anybody says that's a bad idea. I think it's just, you have to be able to go in there. And if 5 guys are sitting at a table having coffee and just say, hey, listen, Bob, you have a fire truck and I have a fire truck and he has a fire truck, can we all go in together maybe and bid out work for the year? Maybe can we all do it here? Can we maybe all buy fuel? That makes sense, but I think, as Carl said, there's 2 different conversations. And I will give you one example of this, a real working example of what we're talking about here, and that's the village of Lakewood. Okay, you can read online, this is 75 pages of a document of a failed attempt. I'm not saying that's what we're trying to do, but that's what happened. They used to get services for 42 years from Crystal Lake. At one point in time in 2007, somebody took over and said, listen, we don't feel the residents of Lakewood are paying their fair share. Okay, we need you to pay more. So they made that presentation to Lakewood. Lakewood said it's too expensive, we're gonna do it on our own. So they tried to start their own fire department. In 4 years, with a private company, the private contractor came back and said, we can't do this anymore, I'm not making enough money. So this is what it's gonna cost now. Again, the trustees reached out to the Woodstock Fire Protection District. They gave them a price, the personnel in their stations, didn't change the names of the trucks, did everything fine. Last year, it came down to that contract rate. The village of Lakewood is 3,000 residents, 3 square miles. They run 283 calls a year. Knollwood is 1 square mile, 1,900 residents, 250 in-district calls a year. No mutual aid, in-district calls. Lakewood's contract with Crystal Lake right now stands at $767,000. So in the midst of this research that we've been doing, even reaching out to Kathleen Peterson, who is the village administrator, she said the same thing. I would be very cautious on what you guys are doing, because again, once you potentially change that where you're not having equipment or facilities or personnel, you do become the beholder of who's providing that service. She said that is where we're at. Fortunately, she was able to do some creative things to lock it in for their community, but they obviously have a larger budget than we do. So, you know, that's, I think, what, just coming on to your point, is that's what we want to be cautious of. And she agrees, she's very heavily connected with ICMA, and she's very pro-consolidation. She is on all these boards, she actually sits on the advisory board for this discussion talk. So she said the same thing. She goes, define your plan, define what you're looking to do. As you said, are we talking about buying fuel together, or are we talking about having somebody come in and provide complete services for the community? That is a difference, I think you would agree. That's a big difference. And I don't think anybody here is questioning trying to save money. Most of the molded firefighters that are on this fire department, we're taxpayers too, we live here. I live here, I see my tax bill. It's not like I live in Waukegan and I'm saying, we'll pay the bill. I'm paying the bill just like everybody else sitting in this room. So I think that there is that difference. And I think that's what we want to do, is I don't see the harm of us sitting down, as you said before, even going, talking these other contracts, what's the harm of us sitting down and coming up with some sort of strategic plan of what we want to do? And then if we want to have, the board wants to go out those talks, at least they're coming in with some information.
Right, I agree with what you're saying, Eric, 100%. But my only, and I guess it's the chicken or the egg, which comes first. My only thought or question, or however you want to put it, is to simply make contact at some point, not today, not tonight, and probably not tomorrow, because there's other things that are right in front of us, to the surrounding communities and say, would you have any interest in sitting down and discussing joint services, shared services? Do you have any interest? That's to me step one. If they say yes, then we've got something. Okay, we have a willing participant. If North Chicago, and I'm just picking on North Chicago, they say no, absolutely not. We have our hands full. Good luck, best of luck. We appreciate all the help you give us, but no, man, we can't handle anymore. Okay, then we're done with them, and just find out who is even interested in talking to us, and if they are, then sometime in the dead of winter or the end of next year, when we have some time and we get some of these other things finished up, to say, okay, let's sit down and see. And now I'll pick on Libertyville. What would you guys have interest in providing to us? How else could we work together to save us money and to be beneficial to what you guys are doing? I'm not using the right terms because I'm not in the fire service.
It's okay.
I'm just looking at it from a business end. That's where I'm at on this. Nothing more, nothing less. Nothing nefarious or anything else. Just simply reaching out.
I agree with the business end. The problem is, one of the biggest things that we keep referencing is Hilltown. Well, first off, they've reduced the number of rooms in that facility. So we don't really know what that is. And because we, as a group, as a board, blame the chiefs, blame the board, we have neglected to sit down with those individuals and actually have dialogue and say, listen, well, what exactly, because you might, who knows, you might walk in, and again, remember, it's not the Village of Libertyville Fire Department or the district, it's Green Oaks. They might say, you know what, we understand the situation, we are levying tax money, we know we did a TIF district. Who knows, they might say, you know what, we'll cover that cost, because again, the biggest benefit we have today is because the fire chief facilitated that contract with Libertyville. And now, instead of sitting there, two different people, you're gonna have the Libertyville fire chief sitting next to the Nolan fire chief in a meeting with the Village of Green Oaks and say, I need you to cover these costs because I'm paying him to do it. So if you don't give me potentially that money, they don't have to, but we haven't had that dialogue, you're essentially cheating this guy out of it, because you're forcing these guys to pay for it, which they might not have the revenue to do so.
And that's what's on, that's another item on the agenda.
I understand that,
Discuss that. But that's exactly where I'm going, is right now, today, and there's multiple things directly in front of us. All this, in my opinion, or for the way I'm reading it on the agenda, is to just open up the discussion with the three of us to say, at some point, whether it be in 6 months or whatever, I think we need to at least make a friendly reach out to the communities around us and just say, hey, do you have any interest? If they say no, and let's be hypothetical and say all four of them say no, we got other plans, then we need to proceed in that way. Then we need to maybe start looking 15 years down the road and go, where the hell are we gonna put a station? What are we gonna do? I mean, there's decisions that, you know, that are right in front of us. You know, I thought my kid just graduated 6th grade, she graduated college, boom, it's like that. And years go by quickly. I'm just putting this on the table that at some point, probably into 17, that we at least reach out and see if the surrounding communities have any interest. That's it.
Well, I think we get this from what we've heard here is to participate with Lake Forest. Just sort of, you know, again, on the basis that really, if it is just neighboring departments getting together, it's like Rockland program, and just to, you know, kick the ball around. What are the challenges out there? That we do that, we continue moving forward with Lake Bluff as we are. See what comes out of the discussions with Highland Parkway, and then based on that, maybe then it would make some sense. Reach out to Libertyville, reach out to North Chicago.
Yeah, I just bring it up because September's coming pretty quick. And I think if they're gonna reach out to us and say, hey, the meeting's gonna be on the 20th of September, are you guys interested? I think we need to be in a position to decide, yes, are we gonna be part of it or not?
Yeah, and I think that's it. I guess what I really find very premature would be anything for asking for any kind of post-meeting, but participating in a study, and then what we learn with that, we expand that to the other communities.
I mean, we participated in
I
the
would think
study
that
with
would be
Lake
fine.
Bluff. I think we're certainly open to participating in discussions with somebody else.
Are you okay with somebody participating in the study with Lake Bluff, Lake Forest?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Who's footing the bill for that?
They are.
Are they?
Oh, I was gonna ask, because
we're not-
There's no financial commitment
That's
for
good,
us.
because that's where we got behind the 8 ball the
Last
last
time,
time that
it
had
was
to
a
do with,
huge dollars.
what it had to do with
Right.
dispatch.
Right.
That we couldn't afford to participate,
Sure.
because the cost of entry was way too high for what we could possibly have gotten out of it, so.
Do you have any issue then with participating in that study with Lake Bluff, or Lake Forest, excuse me? Okay, you're gonna let us know what's going on with this one with Lake Bluff as it comes around?
Yeah.
We can be involved in that as well? Okay. I got nothing else.
Okay. Very good. Now we move on to e-dispatch.
Yeah, I put that on here for a couple of reasons. Number one, I did go out to the dispatch center in Vernon Hills, and Deputy Chief Smith showed me around. I got a chance to talk to the people that were there and the lady who runs it. I was very impressed, and it became very evident to me early on that the decision that you guys made was a smart one. I think that it's a beautiful setup there. They run it extremely well. So I was glad to go out there and at least to become familiar with it, because it really put my mind at ease as to where we were at with dispatching and how it's being handled. So, again, kudos to you guys. One of the things that came up as I was talking to them, and they were talking about the way they document the calls and how they create the data sheets for what goes on and everything. And I said, boy, that would really be nice for the board to see, to be able to look at that and to be aware of exactly what's going on and how the calls are running and where they're running and everything. And they told me that was not available to me, that we could only have it if the chief agreed. And I said, that's fine, no problem. But it just seemed to me funny that, the board is footing the bill for that dispatch. Is there any reason why a board member can't receive the same printouts that you get? Or?
The call thing, I can answer that, because I was now when it got turned over and it was negotiated, it's just a HIPAA thing. It's no different than, again, your role is different as a representative of the district. Yes, you go by a scanner and listen to all the calls. Essentially what gets sent to us is just the report, the call taking. The majority of the information goes into our firehouse program.
Right, no, I'm not talking about calls that specifically list.
I'm not sure what sheet you're talking about.
It was.
I don't receive anything from them.
You don't receive any reports from the dispatch center on the calls and the.
It goes in the firehouse.
Yeah, the sheet you're saying, they keep a daily log. That's not sent to the fire chief. They don't have any. They don't have any.
They seem to imply to me that there was data sheets that they keep And it's not specific information on a particular patient or whatever. It's more, call related as to locations and whether it's mutual aid, whether it's automatic aid, whether it's in district, out of district.
They enter all that in the firehouse. All we have to do is just check the personnel and the narrative in firehouse.
The daily log is just the general information that they hand write down, because when they get the call, it gets all typed in the CAD and computer screen. Then they have to print that sheet off to input it in firehouse, because the Countryside Pro is a county-based platform. That's why we want
Right, but you still enter,
We do not.
NIFRS
No,
reports?
we do not.
You do
They
not?
do that all remotely.
Yeah.
That's the difference
We
between.
just have to update it and then quality control it. That's it.
That's the difference between, that was the other difference between going with Glenview or going with Countryside. The Glenview dispatchers don't enter any information in firehouse at all. The officers at Lake Bluff, which is basically Nancy, and the shift commander at Lake Forest and Highland Park inputs them in data into firehouse. They're doing double work. Because Countryside is the model dispatch center for the county, their situation is seamless. They get the information from the county CAD, that information is bounced over to firehouse because there's a bridge. So all the reporting, the district and everything, they're putting it in the firehouse, no different than back in the day when we used to. You get a call, mutual aid given, you do the whole NIFR screen, they do it all. The only thing that we have to do is the chief and I quality control check the officers, enter in their narrative, and just make sure that if there's any unusual circumstance with the call, that it's appropriately put in the narrative. Other than that, we don't do anything at all.
Then maybe she misunderstood what I was
What
asking.
are you looking for? I mean, is there something
Yeah, I mean,
that
what you
these
want-
guys can get? I mean, is-
I usually have done a report, I did a report that I sent to the trustees that says, for the month of September, we went on 16 ambulance calls that were in District A, B. We also added Lake Bluff as a criteria. On the firehouse, there's actually a tab for calls that took place in Lake Bluff Industrial Park. So those are codes.
Is that quarterly you do that, or?
I used to do it on every month, and now we're doing it on quarterly.
Quarterly,
But it's basically a
Will you
report.
send that to us? Or-
Yeah, you do
Well,
an email.
Right, no, but I mean, then if you'll send it to us, then at the meeting, can you go
Yeah,
through it?
absolutely. If you
Okay,
want to add that to the agenda, there's no reason why we can't do it.
No, it just helps me understand.
Yeah, let's just do that.
Okay.
So that's that. Then the other cost savings with that system going there is the fact that we don't pay any IT costs. We don't pay any data costs, our cellular connection. So that's about $11,000 savings to taxpayers a year by going to Countryside. And that was the big change, I think, between the Glenview proposal and going with Countryside, that was in the county, because all I have to do is make a phone call to the county, and Steve Winecki, who is their IT guy, hey, our computer's not working. He comes out in the afternoon, a brand new tablet, throws on, we get no bill for that. It's covered by the 911 fund. So,
All right, thank you.
and if you want something, Rob, just send us an email. We'd be, I mean, you can print it off at Firehouse. You want to know whatever, or if you, again, like we keep saying, I think if you're going to go have these discussions and you want information, it behooves you to have that information, just to have in your hand.
Well, my purpose was just to be familiar with the facility. I wanted to take a look at it and just see how it was functioning. They were very helpful, gave me basic information. That's all I was looking for.
Yeah.
Right, and you may or may not know this, Eric this year brought to our attention when there was dispatcher week, or,
Right.
serve your dispatcher, and the three of us took lunch out to them, which I think they were very appreciative of, and it was nice of you to let us know. And that was my first time seeing it. It's pretty impressive setup. Did you want to further this and approve this? Is that what you had on this?
I want, just a quick question for Bob on that.
Oh, I didn't know if it was even there
Sure,
yet,
go
sorry.
ahead. When you went over to the dispatch center,
Oh, sorry.
I'm just kind of curious, don't read anything into this, this is just from my, this is from my past life. Did you call them ahead of time?
No, I didn't.
Did you have to prove who you were?
No.
Okay, that's.
But the people at Countryside, I mean, the minute I walked in the door.
Oh, they know you
knew
personally.
who I
Okay,
was.
that's,
Yeah.
Because that's
Me,
actually,
they had arrested.
that's actually a high security installation.
Oh, yeah.
And, having been in
No,
information
and I
security
had
for
told
many,
them
many
too, I
years.
said,
It's like, you just walk up and go, yeah, I'm a trustee of Rockland.
I said, I'm not expecting to go through it today, I just thought maybe I could set up a time, and DC Smith said, no, it's no problem, he says, come on, I'll take you over.
That was in no way meant to be critical of you, I was just kind of curious about their students. They knew you personally.
Yeah, I'd have been a little concerned if they didn't know me and they would walk me right in there, yeah.
Okay.
They tasered.
Not, well, I would too.
I liked it.
I would.
Yeah, do we want to just
Well, yeah, I assumed you wanted to go over the policy that we had, you and John were working on this, so I assumed that's what
Yeah,
that was.
I just took the policy that you use for the MEP.
Right.
And just really, what I did was simplify it and try to hit upon the high points that you guys were concerned about. And, you know, I was hoping that I did hit that because, you know, I tried to stress the fact that we are not emergency responders. We don't play a role at an emergency scene. You know, and that we make sure that in the future, any future board members that come on, you know, are familiar with this and say, oh, okay, these are the guidelines that I need to follow. So I'm just, I present it as a draft and open, you know, any discussion, questions, or.
I mean, it reads fine to me, but does it read fine to you guys? You want us to go ahead and pass it as Bob sent it out? Or do you want any changes made?
Bob, did you see the comments that I emailed?
Yeah, I did. You had the one comment about, you thought that there already was a policy like that, and yes, there is. There's a policy for the chief issues for the staff.
No, but I mean, some little technical.
You changed the E on there. Yes, I did change it on the one that,
So you got it, that's fine. Yeah, the only thing I changed is when he wrote capital E dispatch. And
Yeah.
I changed to small e capital E dispatches. 'Cause
That's
what they're-
that's justifying.
That's their business.
That's justifying the monthly,
There you go.
yeah, actually, I must have printed off the wrong one, because this still has the capital E, but basically, it's this one with it changed from a capital E on e-dispatch to a small e dash dispatches.
does anybody want any other changes, or are you prepared to pass it? Hence the discussion and action.
Yeah.
Well, I will call for a motion to adopt the e-dispatch policies and procedures.
So moved.
For district trustees.
So moved as presented with the,
As amended.
as amended, excuse me, I was gonna say as amended with the small e's.
Voice vote or a roll call?
You can do a voice vote.
Okay.
It's just a policy.
Yep. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Bob. Okay. Discussion and action on rescue services for hilltop property. I know, Dave, you're the one who actually put it on here, but that's.
Yeah, you've been the one that's get involved in it from the TIF meetings to whatever. I think, again, we've kind of kicked it around a lot. It's kind of at a point where I think you want us to start moving on this thing, right? Get
I've been
meetings.
bringing it up for almost a year.
I know, well, that's
I
why I put it on the agenda. I think we need to do something. And the guy to my right here is the guy that knows the most about it with the two of you, so.
I think, yes, and we've had some discussions about it, and I think one of the things certainly trying to figure out was the role of Libertyville in the discussions. In other words, do they want to be an active partner with us, or do they want to let us really do the legwork and then come back to them as our vendor? I think that's kind of my question right now, is we set something up with Green Oaks and with the operator.
I think at first, whoever it may be, with me, needs to go over there and at least make contact with them to see who we can set up, because you're not gonna have to have Green Oaks, but you're also gonna have to have a management company for the nursing home there as well. Yeah, I'm sorry, Nancy, thank you. You know, and then at some point, yes, we will probably have to involve Rich in this, but it's all gonna be based on the money that we'll receive from them. And how we proceed then, because right now we're gonna be looking at the next 7 months, our contract being up for renewal with Libertyville. Well, I can't go to Rich and say, hey, give me a number for everything, not knowing what we're gonna be getting out of them. So the talk needs to start with what I would say would be the administrator from Green Oaks, probably Nancy Cutter from Senior Lifestyles, to start.
Okay.
Carl, you wanna,
Yeah, I will definitely, work with the chief on that, so.
we don't need any board Anything other than what we're discussing right now?
Now,
Go
this
ahead.
becomes the consensus, the
Right,
board to
okay.
authorize.
No, I think that's
the
great,
discussion.
whatever you guys can bring back each month, and then I would assume that once we get close to whatever, well, I shouldn't assume that, once we get close to whatever, I guess, the final decision becomes, I guess we can discuss it at a board meeting, and if you or the both of you think the board needs to meet with whomever, then we can schedule a separate meeting for that. In the interim, I think between you and Carl, you guys, or, excuse me, I didn't mean to leave you out, I don't know how, I don't know how it, you know, it.
No, that's an outside contract, so I typically handle the operational stuff inside, John's outside. The only thing I would say to you too is that I know John was waiting for the direction from you guys too, because we talked about it. The other thing for trustee Grum's benefits, since you are new here, that facility has been a fluid facility. It started off at 300 plus rooms. They cut that down by about 20-some%, and they're continuing to possibly reevaluate that because they're realizing that their audience, if you will, is geared more towards the 1,100 members type thing. Instead of having a bunch of units with a bunch of people in it, it behooves them to have bigger facilities that people can occupy and they can charge more for them. So that's one of those things. They're also withholding some of the other projects. We just happen to have the benefit of one of our members is dating the project manager over there. She's been, very open saying, yeah, I know you guys were originally told this, but we're doing this. So I think that's why it's also beneficial for that, also for your benefit, to show the good faith of Green Oaks and the contractor that we, the chief facilitated the Libertyville fire inspector to do the plan review. We don't have anybody on staff to do that.
Not that big.
And they have qualified person, Assistant Chief Comer's doing that. They pay the whole bill without question. $12,000.
It's like a pass-through?
That they said, yeah, I mean, it's the whole plan, you're doing their plan review of the whole facility. They pay the bill, no problem, no questions asked. Again, but years ago, when they originally came to us, when Acting Chief Wilberger was in place, myself, we basically told them up front, we're not interested in a new ambulance, we're not interested in a new fire truck or a ladder truck. We know how many beds you're gonna have, we know there's a cost to those beds based on ICMA studies, the fire chief studies, IAFF studies, showing, the call per day per bed, if you will. That's what we're truly here for. They actually came back to us and said, okay, they delayed, if you remember, they delayed several of those meetings because I'm sure they were talking in our office saying, okay, these guys are not gonna be, enamored by us coming in there and saying, we'll write you a check for $1 million ladder truck. They know that there's a cost for this and they want us to pay for it. And they completely changed their approach with us, which again, now stepping in, Chief Harlow coming to this was instrumental in facilitating that, and it's huge. Because that 12 grand, we could have, in theory, we should have been on the hook for that, if you will, because it's our responsibility to do that and to provide that service, and they were willing to do that. So I think that shows a little bit of their good faith in that scenario.
So I mean, up to now, they have acted in good faith, but now it's time for, like you said, for the rubber to really hit the road. The scope of what we're really talking about here is the ambulance calls. There's going to be other impact on the district too. I mean, that retail, and again, this is within the healthcare facilities. The retail stuff, there's going to be, there's going to be people slipping and falling. And there's going to be fire calls in there, and we're just not going to get any tax dollars out of that because of the tariff.
We have approximately 12,000.
Yeah, that's where it was before it got frozen. But really, the scope of the discussions right now is, as Eric said, there's a certain, we can predict a certain number of calls per bed, right? And those calls cost us $1,000, roughly $1,000 per call, and we're getting no money. So somebody's got to make us whole because we really cannot let that thing operate. Green Oaks walk away scot-free and let that thing operate on the backs of our taxpayers.
Because it bankrupts us
It bankrupts us, yeah.
in a year, so we're done. So, step one is for you and John to figure out a time to meet with the appropriate people.
Yeah.
And then,
We'll put our
I'm
list
assuming
together.
we'll kind of almost have this on the agenda each month of kind of an update of where we're at.
That would be reasonable, just to get an update on it.
Okay. And, when you're over there, or you've got things going on over there, and you think it might be interesting for any one of the three of us to come over, we're all in general around, give a shout. If there's something going on over there you think would be interesting for one of us to see, I would be appreciative and would love to see anything that's going on over there.
Yeah, one of the unfortunate things is that I personally knew the person who, who was head of the planning commission, but he died, unfortunately, about a year or so. And And that would, I mean, he was very open to what we needed to do here with the fish play. But again, I said, so far, they've acted in good faith. It seems they just have to make it happen. Also too, just to mention that the visitor center over there is now open. So if anybody's interested, they go in and see what they're all about. We're welcome there.
Okay. Station grounds, that's me. I guess I pull in and see this from a landscaper's eye. And I guess I'm looking for guidance from you, John. We've had different discussions. You and I have stood in the parking lot and done this and this and this. I don't know if you have, again, this is probably gonna come out wrong, so don't take it that way, the manpower or the desire or the want and ability to do kind of a grounds cleanup. And if you don't, that's perfectly fine. Then I just want to talk to the other board members about making a list and getting a price on I'm gonna say getting the place cleaned up again. It's no longer a spring cleanup, it's kind of a summer cleanup, and I think I spoke to you a couple times on the outside there. I'd like to eliminate a couple of those beds, even the one around the sign, just for ease of maintenance to bring it down and minimize it. So I'm just trying to get a direction from you on, if you say you guys really need to handle this, then the three of us will handle it, because I do not at all feel comfortable ever coming over here and asking anybody to go pull weeds. So.
No, and like we had talked about before, we were getting ready to set a spring cleanup, now
Right.
summer cleanup day. It's just been a matter of getting people together to do it.
Right. And if you don't have the time to do that, that's okay. Then the three of us just need to set some dollars away like we did last time and get somebody in here to do the cleanup and get a little soil in and seed some of these areas in and eliminate some of these beds that just really don't do anything. And I'm okay either way, I really am. I'm just looking for guidance from you of go ahead and take care of it, or no, we want to be involved in it. And I'm perfectly fine either way. I'm just looking for direction from you.
No, I think something we can handle.
Okay? Again, I'm happy to.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, let me put it this way. Why don't you two guys, seriously, discuss it tomorrow, the next day, and then give me some feedback, and I can email, we can email to these guys on what to do. I mean, truly, I think it's, from a landscaper end, I see a crew of 3 guys are gonna spend the better part of a day here, cleaning, weeding, getting some soil down, seeding these areas. And I'm not qualified to run a fire truck, so I don't. And I don't know if your guys would rather just have a crew of
I think
landscapers come in.
Like you're saying, that's a
Well,
good
that's,
point, is
I'm
that
leading you,
it's come to a
I'm
point
leading
where
you, yeah, I'm leading
the
you
board should
guys to
look at
that.
investigating, getting somebody to come in here.
I'm
The
leading-
guys are cutting the grass as it is, or trying to
And
don't
Eric,
do that.
I'm leading
but,
you guys
yeah.
to that direction. I just want you to tell me. So think about it, talk about it tomorrow, and just let me know, hey, go ahead and handle it. And then between the 3 of us, we'll figure out if and where the money is and do what
Well,
we gotta do.
if I can make a suggestion to you guys,
There's
I
no
think-
money, okay.
I think if we were to get a bid,
Mhm.
if you get a bid or whatever,
Yeah.
to say what it is, and I think it's something also that the chief and I can take to our association and maybe do a 50-50 deal. I mean, because again, the
Okay.
association does use this building. It is a district building, but we utilize it for our purposes too. I think
Right.
the guys would have no issue with splitting that type of building, depending on the reason. I'm not gonna speak for our association, but they might even say, you know what,
Would you like me to go to the guy that did it last time, all the pruning and stuff, and give him a list, go over the list of what I think should be done, get a price from him?
Yeah.
And once we have a
Sure.
number,
Yeah.
then we'll
Yeah.
decide,
Sure.
okay, I'll reach out to him and have him come over, but I'm gonna make a detailed list of what I expect done, as well as with what you guys want done around the station, okay? I will get on that. The non-agenda item I have, which is not really that big of a deal, it's just to update the 2 board members. I did reach out to Northern Trust and spoke with David Lee today, because I didn't feel it was fair to go around him and not offer him the opportunity as far as our loan goes. And he said that Northern Trust simply has no interest in in renewing and meant no disrespect by it, they just have a different business model, and they don't, they have no interest in this.
Okay.
So I am attempting to continue to fulfill the requests of Harris and Lake Forest Bank and Trust to get them all the information that we need, gentlemen, and get 2 proposals set up. We're probably, my suggestion is to have the board, and certainly if anybody else wants to listen to a loan be discussed, you're welcome to come. We'll have a meeting with the 2 banks, let them come in here. They both want to look at the facility. I can tell you the 2 banks that I've spoken with, they're both very interested in partnering with this facility and doing some other good stuff that I think will help us. So that's just an update of where we're at. I hope to have this kind of finalized and ready for a board vote maybe by as soon as the end of next month or next month's meeting. And then we have to sit on it until April, I believe. I don't think we can prepay it without a penalty. But that's a question we'll ask both the banks if they want to make it sooner, if there's a prepayment penalty, if they want to, how that would work. So that's just an update for Bob and Carl and information for you guys, not that you probably really care.
Also on the non-agenda items, figured might as well, we're going to discuss whether we want to have a special meeting for the purpose of community engagement.
I don't, oh, go ahead.
I just would like to have more information before we get pelted with questions and concerns and issues. I'd like to have a little better idea of where we're headed and what we're doing.
No, I would say that will be probably a number of months down the road. Kind of laid out here.
Right, I think we've got, you're going to have the meeting with, or the study with Lake Bluff. You're going to follow up on the study with Lake Forest and just slowly chug along with this, continue to gather information and agree that we want to keep the door open to talking with all of our neighbors. And as time goes on, continue the investigation and working with everybody around us. Whatever's out there, we'll get the information as it is. I see 2 different studies going on, and to me, the most important thing before we can do anything is solidify the thing with Hilltop, or what is it called now? The Sheridan. I mean, I don't see that we can do a thing until we have that all resolved.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything any information we could give to the residents. We don't know.
We don't have it.
We
Don't have it. There's nothing being done.
And the other means of communication are still there. I mean, on the website, all of our email addresses are there. Certainly, you can ask us questions at any time. I mean, again,
No, we can't.
Yeah, in that context, it's in the meeting is really the issue. But you can engage with a dialogue with any one of us at any time.
But you won't answer us.
After the meeting, you can talk to us.
Right, just not in the context.
But you see how late it is now? People, now, Dan, don't be having a little
I'm not having a.
fit there. Don't
Mrs.
ignore
Issel,
me.
Mrs.
Okay?
Issel, I'm not. I'm looking directly at you.
Thank you.
Okay? You know where I live. You know where
Care where
Bob
you
lives.
live.
Right. If you want to ask me a question outside of this meeting, whether it's during the day or in the afternoon, shoot me a call.
No, I want the people here, the other residents, Dan, to listen to my question. You put a gag
Yeah, well,
on us,
I've
and
done
you're
nothing.
ignoring me right now.
I'm not ignoring you at all. You want to adjourn the meeting?
See, there you go.
Well, then I can talk to you.
No, here, I do have one, just quick for the attorney. Are we allowed to talk to the 2 chiefs as long as they don't have to answer us? Are we allowed to ask them a question?
It's up to them, it's their meeting.
As to whether or not the public can talk to the 2 chiefs?
Right.
So they should
The
be outside of
the Open Meetings Act states that the opportunity for public comment is to allow members of the public to address comments and concerns to the board.
Okay,
That's
then I can just make a statement as to, I know for a fact, the fire chief of Lake Bluff is retiring next month, correct? So how can you have a meeting
Lake
with?
Forest.
I mean, I'm sorry, Lake Forest. So how can you have a meeting if he's leaving?
Because the meeting will involve Bob Kiley and the other directors from the other communities, as well as, they're not gonna go without a chief forever, they're gonna
No, I
have
know
a chief.
that.
But, because
Well,
those,
you know that.
those discussions will go on
Okay.
for a long time.
Then you can.
Well, we do have item 17, the nominations, resignations, terminations.
None.
Okay. Item 18, adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Holy Christ. Who did what?
Right. They did something.
Who made the motion?
Dan,
Dan and I said-
tomorrow morning,
I didn't hear you.
40B at your group.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Hold on.